What's up, landlords? Renee here. We're going to have a chat with Kevin. This is our first time speaking. I don't know him, and we're just going to have some fun and we're just going to do a live stream. So, Kevin, something I like to do to try to have fun with it is to start this thing off. I'm just going to tell you everything I think I know, and you correct me where I'm wrong, if you're cool with that.
Let's do it. This will be interesting.
Okay, so I think you're 38, you have a wife and 4 sons. Is that correct?
Correct so far.
Okay, great. Same age as me, but I have 3 kids, 2 daughters, 1 son. I know you're in Denver, Colorado right now, but were you born and raised there as well?
I was born and raised in basically the Des Moines, Iowa area, little outside of Des Moines.
Okay, so you'll have to tell me how you ended up in Denver. But recently you started your own real estate team, like a brokerage or something, and it's called Life and Legacy Properties. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So I've been in the business for almost a decade, but it was late last year that I went out solo and launched my own team.
Okay, so you got a bunch of experience working with another thing, and you've recently broke off and did your own Life and Legacy Properties.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And you help people buy and sell houses in the Denver, Colorado greater area, and something to do with small investment properties too. Can you explain that part? Because I'm unsure about that.
Yeah. So I help other people buy and sell, but because I have my own experience and portfolio of rentals, um, I find myself answering a lot of questions, and that's kind of my niche. A lot of people in real estate find a niche, whether it's mobile home parks or land deals or whatever. And my niche has been really helping people understand how to get into single family, small multifamily rentals.
Oh, great. That's really interesting. I like that. Okay. Do you offer property management services?
I do not. Nope.
Okay. Um, do you do your own self management or do you use third party property managers?
Yeah, for now I self-manage everything. Eventually
Okay.
I'd like to, maybe hand it over to somebody. We'll see. But for right now, I've got the capacity to do it myself.
Okay, great. So that's pretty much the end of what I got. There was one other question I'd like you to elaborate on because I think you do some charity work and stuff like that. I couldn't really pinpoint it. I saw some shares and this and that, and I figure I was running out of time. I knew I was going to talk to you. Can you explain a little bit more, elaborate what I missed, and maybe talk about some of your charity stuff and how you relocated to Denver?
Sure. So, well, okay. So we'll back up. So I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and then I went to college and out in Pennsylvania at a small school there that's no longer around. But I had friends from college that were here in Denver, and they were actually in the music scene, starting a band. And so I think that's what every person is supposed to do after college: is you go and you hang out with people in a band. So I came out to Denver and figured I'd just spend a couple of years here, and that was right about the time, also, if you remember, of 2008, 2009. And so there, nowhere was really thriving. And so I figured I'll just hang out in Denver for a couple of years. Ended up meeting my wife out here, and I just never left. So I thought it was going to be a two year stay in Denver. And it's been 15 years now. Love it. And, have really built my life here. My wife is basically raised in Colorado. She wasn't born here, but so her family is here in Colorado, so it really makes sense to stay. And then some of the charity stuff you're talking about is, I've tried to stay and be very involved in the community here. And so over the years, depending on what stage of life people knew me, I did a lot before I had my own kids. I did a lot of mentoring youth in the neighborhood. And I used to be the hangout spot for all the kids that would grow up around here, play video games and whatnot. But more recently, in the last few years, I've built some relationships with some people actually out of Atlanta. And there's a group that I'm part of there. And so the guy who spearheads that kind of life coaching development group, he's got an orphanage in Uganda that he helps oversee. And so some of us are going there in about a month and a half to visit Uganda, and visiting that orphanage will be part of it. So that's most recently probably what you saw
Yes.
online. And so doing a lot of really good work there. And so I just kind of get to jump in and hopefully support what they're doing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, when I worked in Iraq, I worked with a lot of Ugandans and Sierra Leones and stuff, and they're really friendly, good, hardworking guys, man. That's great what you're doing. I saw some of those posts and I was like, what is this about? I was like, is he just sharing it, supporting it, and you're going there? That's great. Very good.
Yeah, really excited. I actually have a lot of friends who have resettled in the US, either refugee or other related resettlement here from Uganda, Congo. And so most of my African connections are actually here in the US. And so this will also be really fun to go and see kind of their world there. Even though it's like I have a lot of African relationships here. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's great. Everything's by design. You're right where you're supposed to be. That's really cool. I'm gonna follow all your socials at the end. You can share it, and I'll put them below and stuff. And I'd like to follow you along that journey because that's admirable. So, I'm like a DIY landlord, very small scale landlord, and I call myself the forever landlord. I love everything about like self management and stuff. So, I'd like to get into all my like property management questions and stuff. If you're cool with that.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, how long have you had rentals?
So well, I guess technically the answer for this is my first home I bought it in 2011. Now they call it house hacking. At the time, it was just called you can't afford your mortgage, and so you get roommates.
Yeah.
Before it was rebranded as anything trendy, I guess my first rental home was actually my home where I lived, and so I lived there for almost 10 years. But I bought my first actual like investment property in 2015. So it was about 4 years later. I bought a duplex. So my first home that I had roommates, did the house hacking thing, and then started the investment journey formally in 2015. With a
Yeah,
duplex.
I would call it like 13 years because that first one counts because you did not sell it what a lot of Americans do. They sell one house to get the next one and they never really have a rental. So that house hacking, I think it counts.
Yeah, yeah, and I still own it. I still own it now.
That's
So
great.
that was
Um,
what unlocked everything for me.
so I know you have your four sons and stuff. And my next question will be like, how long do you intend to keep your rentals? So would it be like interested in like, are you going to hand that down or do you have an exit strategy?
Yeah, I've thought of a couple options. Obviously, it's hard to make definitive plans about 20 years down the road. I don't plan to sell them. I plan to hold them for a couple of reasons. But one is three of them are right up the street from me, and so having rental properties so close is actually just very, very convenient. So they're not really a headache. They're easy to keep an eye on. My plan is to hold them on to long term, and then talked about the idea maybe potentially of doing like a 1031 exchange into if we ever need like a second home somewhere and bounce back and forth a lot at a later stage of life. It might make sense to 1031 it into like an investment property elsewhere, and just kind of see what the laws allow at that time. But
Okay.
I don't plan on selling them unless it makes sense one day to roll over a couple of them into a 1031 and get something bigger.
Hmm. If you had to give, a one word or a few word answers, a reason why you first got into real estate investing, what would you say?
Uh, it wasn't a part of a strategic plan.
Okay.
I, I've never actually gone out and shopped for a home. Like, never made a decision to go buy a rental property and set up on the MLS and start looking. It's just been when the opportunity presents itself. So I guess my one word is opportunity.
Okay.
But that's what I would encourage anybody. All the decisions you make, it's so that when the opportunity presents itself, you can jump on it. So I'll just say opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. And I just know like a lot of agents and stuff don't invest in real estate. It's kind of weird. It's good that you do. So it's interesting that it was kind of almost like opportunity accidental. It's not like strategically planned. Huh. So how many rentals do you have?
I have 5 rental properties, 7 doors,
Okay.
and then my own primary residence.
So 5, 7, and are they all local within like let's say a 2 hour driving distance?
Yeah, they're all within. I mean, so 3 of them are up the street, and then 2 of them are 15-minute drive
Wow, that's
from
awesome.
real
And
close to central Denver here.
That's great. Why would you say that you intended to do self management? Is it because you had time? Because I think you referenced that earlier.
Yeah, I think with the first ones, I was learning as I went. And
Okay.
so um I I just bought it, and I inherited the tenants that were already there. And 10 years later, 9 years later, they're still there. They're great tenants.
Wow.
And so I think my transition into it was easy. I was able to figure it out, the logistics of a lot of it, without having a lot of hoops to jump through. And so then when it came down to, um, moving out of a home, renting it out, whatever, I kind of had my systems in place. And so just always tried to take it one step at a time. And thus far, it is not required that I really get any sort of outside help.
Okay. And also with your background, I feel like that would help you be a little bit more brave to do it because I was a little bit skittish to take over. Like I had a property manager in the beginning, but then I eventually took over. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
you?
I'll say this, since you talk about, being brave to jump in. But when I bought my first duplex, I get the call from the guy I worked with on a Sunday afternoon. He'd come across this deal for a duplex. I'm not sure how. And I just spent the Sunday afternoon. I probably had like football on in the background, and then I was literally just Googling, basically, like how to have a rental property and what's a HELOC. I just spent hours, just reading, and that's what I did, because I literally did not know what needed to happen. And so that's been the journey. I think anybody who's done this long enough is, you're always learning something, and it just comes down to if you're going to sit there sometimes and put in the work to learn and figure it out.
Yeah, that's really awesome to be brave enough to even jump in. That's so cool. Googling it and self-taught and everything. So, what kind of rentals would you say you have? You have single family homes and small multifamily like duplex, tri, quad.
Yeah, so I have a duplex. I have a single family home, but it has a main floor and a basement apartment, and so it functions as a duplex for me. I used to live in that home, and so when I moved out, I kept the guy who rented out the basement. Even when I lived there, he stayed, so we just rented out upstairs. So in a sense, I have two duplexes, a couple of single family homes, and then a little rental condo.
Okay. And then the house that you have now, do you think that might be a rental in the future? Because it seems to be your trend a little bit.
I think I have an agreement with my wife that we're not leaving our primary home.
Okay.
Like, we moved a couple times over like 3 years, and neither one of us want to keep doing that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's tough
we
for
really,
the family.
but you understand, right? We kept having babies. The family kept growing, and so she's just like, hey, we need some space. And our dream home, which was right down the street, popped up for sale. So again, not a strategic plan, but the opportunity came up to buy it. We moved right down the street, and I hope that I die maybe down in the living room or something. I don't want to move again.
Yeah, same here. That happened to me, as well. I was getting some rentals and then I just landed in this house and it turned into our forever house and now we don't want to leave. So your rentals that you have, are they all long term? Do you do any mid or short term stuff?
It's all long term for me. Denver has some. If you're going to do short term, you have to live in it. And so I can't do short term rentals, where I own my properties. I
Hmm.
can't run short terms. You can only do it if it's your primary residence. And I could dabble in the midterm, but like I said, I've had tenants in my places for years, and so it's just a good system right now, and I haven't really messed with it.
Yeah, I kind of like the long term, kind of hands off, less moving parts. So, in your offerings, do you allow subletting? You know what I mean, like where a tenant can like get somebody to replace them.
Yeah, I only have one property where I've needed to worry about that. And that was actually, some girls who were fresh out of college. And there were three of them, and they were deciding if they wanted to add a fourth roommate or not. And so they were good with three, but you know how it is when it's like their first real lease, their first real rental, and they're like, we might add one more girl. And so I said, we agreed to some terms up front. I said, if you want to add somebody else, you can find them. It's probably, you're just going to pick a friend of yours and you can bring them to me. And as long as they qualify and stuff, then that'll be fine. So I did that option with those girls.
Okay, with your long-term residents that you've had for a while, when the lease term ends, does it go month to month, or do you always require like new 1-year terms?
It defaults into month to month.
Okay.
And so if I like to renew as long as everything is good with the tenant and there's no reason for concern. But sometimes I had some people who had to move out unexpectedly, and so I ended up with tenant turnover like between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is, and so for those tenants, I gave them a year. They wanted a year, so I gave them a year. I said, but at the end of this, if we want to add a few months on the end, let's just sort that out based on what their needs were. So I try to be flexible. I try to be, follow the lease. Here's what it is. But in the end, we're talking about a roof over your head. And if you're good tenants, then I'll try to work with you on timing. But yeah, defaults into month to month. But I try to renew and provide that consistency.
Do you offer 2-year lease terms at all?
I haven't. And I think it's, then, like I said, people lived in the home for a decade, but I haven't seen the need to do a 2-year lease just because I think so much can change in people's life that I don't want them locked in unnecessarily, and I don't want to be locked in if something changes.
Yeah. So how do you go about rent increases with your different leases and stuff, and checking the market rents and all that stuff?
Yeah, I would say that's been a learning process for me, because like with everything's gotten so expensive. I don't like feeling, to some degree, like personally feeling like I'm this source of financial burden. If like rent keeps going up and it's like it's tough on the tenants. I don't want to keep raising rent unnecessarily. I also know my costs have gone up astronomically. And so with all of my tenants, I try to communicate with them. I will always try to offer you the best deal on the block. However, as my costs go up, I'm going to have to consistently raise rent. And rather than you wondering, this has been a learning, right, where I've changed. Some years it used to be rent wouldn't change. And now I've been communicating, you just need to expect that rent will go up every year. But unless I have real big reasons, something big's going on, right, that rent will always still give you the best deal on the block. But just know that every year when you do renew, there will be a slight increase in rent. And so they've all rolled with it. And I tell them, you can always look at comps. If you don't want to stay here and you want to move elsewhere, where are you going to move that's a better deal? And if you find one, you send it to me and I'll take a look at it. And thus far it hasn't been a problem.
So with the total properties you have now and the units you have now, if you like had to kind of throw a number out there, like where would you like to be in the future? Like what would your ideal property count, unit count be? Like if you had a goal or anything you're striving to, what would that be?
I've thought about this a lot, and I think I would like to actually eventually get out of the condo rental, because there's so much control you don't have with an HOA. It's nice that I don't have to worry about a lot of stuff, but that HOA has almost tripled since I bought it, and so it eats up all the cash flow. And so it's been a wonderful place for my tenants to live, but it's been a little bit of a pain for me. And so I think I'd like to switch that one out. Maybe, add a few units, get like a 4-plex or something like that. But maybe long-term 10 units. And I think we'll have to monitor where it goes. But if that can be ultimately what funds the retirement years, that'd be really great.
If you go ahead.
And I probably just need maybe one more door to do that when the time comes, the properties get paid down.
So if you were thinking about a number, like a monthly net income number? Is it the magic 10K a month? Like, what would you be shooting for?
Yeah, I think if I've looked at the rents right now, I think by the time, let's fast forward 20 years, I think it's reasonable to assume that those properties are generating 20,000 a month. And then set aside, taxes, insurance, maintenance, that sort of thing. So there's probably maybe 15 that they're going to come, and then you got, whatever the tax, it's so hard to know, whatever the tax situation is, but I think there's probably going to be 15 a month when the time comes, and then whatever left over after the government takes their part.
Okay. Yeah, because I just hear a lot of people talk about, I'm just trying to get to like 10K a month because, that's just like a magic number that I hear a lot. And I'm glad that you kind of, forecast a little bit and you're kind of counting, hey, inflation and taxes and this stuff is kind of subject to change. So it's hard to plan, but at least to have an idea is cool. And you told me that your worst kind of rental would be that condo. Is that like a high rise?
No, um, it's an old building in this dynamite part of town. The location, right? Real estate is location, location, location.
Yeah.
And so the only reason I bought it is because somebody reached out and they said, "Hey, I thought I was moving back to Denver. I'm not. I want to get rid of this place. We've been renting it while we're out of town. We don't want it on the MLS. We just want to be done." And I don't know how I got that thumbs up on the screen.
Somehow, I guess it.
But um, so we're not moving back. And so I pitched it to a couple of people. They didn't want it. I communicated with the sellers and I said, I'd be interested in buying it. If you guys just want to be done with it, I'm offering them a price. And so I got it for a good deal. Um, and so that's how I ended up, but it's just an old building. There's maybe 25 units, all single, like kind of row home style, but it sits right on the edge of this park. It's unbelievable location. But because of the age, they got some asbestos in there. They had some bad roof repairs. So everything that goes with an old building
Yeah.
has just sucked all the cash flow out of it. But it's never sat empty for a single second.
Wow.
Every tenant transfer has basically been the person moving out hands the keys to the person moving in.
It's a good location. That's what it is.
That's why it's a win. And it'd be amazing if the HOA hadn't done what it did. But
So that's your worst, I guess, type of rental. What would you be your most ideal, best case?
I like the duplex situation. I think if I'm going to pick, because my duplex, they have a garage. They each have 3 bedrooms and they each have a yard.
Wow.
And so that's what people want. That's why people don't like apartment living oftentimes, is they want a pet, they want a yard for their dog. They want a garage. And so single family is the other way to do that. But single family is just more expensive. And so I love diversifying between the 2 tenants. But getting a duplex that offers basically all of the amenities that people really desire out of a single family. That's the sweet spot.
That's really cool. So this the duplex you're talking about, it's interesting. Is it a top down or side by side? Wow.
More of a front back,
Okay.
shape. So they have minimally shared walls, and nobody's up above you. It's a
Wow.
ranch L shape.
Man, honestly, I kind of wish that the government would get on board and kind of let builders and kind of like build more stuff like this, because everything's so expensive. And I love the way that you worded that. It's kind of like you're getting the same perks and feeling it as a single family home, but it's actually you're sharing a space and it's a duplex. And the problem with a lot of duplex, especially the top down, and noise, and then the poor parking situation and no garage and sharing walls and all that stuff. Oh man.
Yeah. So that I've really liked that one, and I think the tenants like it too. I have one of my other single family rentals is on a lot that is zoned for a duplex. And so from a long term, when you talk about how many doors or long term strategy, the best use of that lot long term will probably be to tear down the little 700 square foot house that's on it, and build a duplex there. And so that'll be an addition for whenever the time comes.
Yeah, that'll be fun too. I love that building. I only went through it once, the building kind of process of, having a vision, doing plans and making something that was not there, and you have a whole new house. It's really fun. It's stressful. It took longer than expected and cost more, but it's really awesome because you're like really adding value, and impacts, and you serve people and you help people that get to live there now. That was before, it was just dirt or nothing. It's
Yeah.
great.
If I can, I'll jump on that, because I think when people talk about rentals and investment property, oftentimes they're viewing it just through the lens of dollar signs. And I think it matters, right? It's like, my tenants aren't going to be happy if I'm broke and I can't fix anything, right? If I'm stressed and I'm putting all my financial pressure and projecting it onto them. Like, that's not fun. Nobody wants to have a broke landlord that can't fix anything and whatever else. And so, yes, there's a financial component to it. But what you were talking about, creating something, giving people a place to live. I tell people, you can't live in your Tesla stock. You can't live in your Apple stock. If you're going to invest somewhere, I think real estate historically gives very good returns. It's a very stable, predictable sort of an investment in many regards. But it meets an immediate need. And if I had somebody who was facing a hard time, and I could either give them $200 a month to pay their landlord because they're struggling to make rent, or if I own the property, if I have to lower rent by $200 to get their family through a tough time, I'd rather lower it by 200 than giving them money to pay to whoever the landlord is, And so I just always tell people, like, I think in an investment, finding that balance between, yes, you want to be wise financially with it, but also it does get to meet a tangible need and provide people a dignifying place to live. And it gives you a lot of options when you control the asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I really think at a basic level, people don't really understand, like, at least my viewpoint on it is you have, a couple different ways to invest. And I can oversimplify this, but basically you have paper assets and then you have hard assets. Paper assets is stock market, mutual fund, and, currencies. And then hard assets would be like a real estate, a business, or gold bars or something. Then once you have those two aspects in mind, there's two different ways you can do it. You can invest for growth, which means you're saving and waiting for something to go up, or you can invest for income, which means you're getting money. I like real estate because it's a hard asset and it's an income producing asset, which is like you live off of that money that's coming in, and it's like a fish in a fish tank. The water's always pouring in and there's always fresh water coming in, and you learn to live off of whatever amount of water, funds you have coming in. Unfortunately, when you have people investing in, all these funds and everything, they put all this money into, like, paper assets, and they're investing for growth. They're trying to calculate so many unknowns, and they're trying to forecast how long they're going to live. And that's like them living in one fish tank with one set amount of water, and they're slowly seeing it evaporate and dry up. And they're constantly being reminded that the water table is going lower and lower. And they're like, how long am I going to live? And it's a very scary type of way of living. And then you just kind of fizzle out. And I would rather live in a more of a kind of like abundance kind of like way of living. Hey, and it may not be as much as if you invested in Tesla and it jumps up and does something amazing, or crypto, but it's more of a safe, sustainable, long-term, like real freedom type of way of investing. At least for me, that's my perspective on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I've tried to think a lot about this because I have a friend who he always trashes on investing in American real estate. And if he ever watches this, he'll know who he is. He's big into like buying businesses and things like that. But whether it's crypto or whatever, like, the reality is crypto could go to zero. I don't think my real estate is going to hit zero. I do think there's a bottom of real estate that is still worth something. But if I had a plumbing business, right, a business, I mean, those people lose those. They lose the revenue, whatever happens, and they lose everything. And I think with real estate, if you go about it right, it's not going to hit zero. The land is at a minimum, the land's worth something,
Mhm.
and so I think it's important for people probably to look at that and diversify. It's probably a feature, not a bug
Mhm.
that, I, and this is where the Zestimate like messes with people's mind. I don't think it's necessarily healthy. I don't think real estate is designed for us to watch the value every single day.
No.
That's not how real estate works. And COVID messed this up for a lot of people because real estate all of a sudden got thrown into this get rich quick bucket. And that's not how real estate necessarily has ever worked. Real estate is a long, slow burn, and it's a great way for building wealth. And I think everything got like funny glasses on, where everybody started confusing, should I invest in crypto or real estate? It's like, whoa. These are not the same.
Yeah.
So I think a part of the adjustment now is reframing that and people getting back into the long play that traditionally is real estate, and it's safer, for most people if you just give it time and let it cook.
Yeah, and also what you mentioned earlier, we are actually serving somebody. Like, I built an auxiliary dwelling unit in the back, and I remember it was just my yard, and I went through the whole permitting process, and refinance, cashed out. I spent all that money, and it cost more. I had to fight the city and file a variance. It was a big headache. But when it was all said and done, a young college lady moved in straight out of college. Her parents came down, and you could tell that they loved their daughter, and they picked this spot, and it was a safe place. They were happy to let her live here. um and like I would see her come and go, and she would like go to work and stuff, and it was cool that I'm helping provide a safe place that these parents love their daughter. They came down there and they're living, in this brand new thing that I just invented. Like, it was not, it was just a yard out there, and it was so cool that idea that I'm really like serving and helping somebody. And what you said, like sometimes people, it's strictly numbers. There is a human aspect to that, and you are serving other people, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think that's why I think real estate is wonderful. It really is, for me, it's been a great blend of both of those worlds.
All right, so I want to just kind of rapid fire shoot out some more tactical questions here. If you could tell me what your biggest problem is now with like self management, like what do you hate the most?
Keeping Colorado last year had the like most legislative changes and regulatory implementation. Like the governor has done a lot of stuff under calling it like, being like a very tenant friendly government, and and so keep trying to keep up with all of that
Okay.
has, I mean, I have full head of hair, and, all of that little stuff that it's just, for me, it's just annoying. you
Yeah.
know Good landlords and good tenants will sort it out, but they have to still make all these laws.
Can you give me a quick summary of like how you would go about handling a maintenance or repair, scenarios? Maybe something recently happened, or you just make up something.
Yeah. I paid a couple invoices yesterday. The tenant texted me the ice maker on the refrigerator. It was all clogging up, and something with the frost, the defrost, whatever. And it was just, they couldn't get ice, and it was clogging up inside the freezer. And so he texted me, sent me a picture, and then I connected him with, I just got an appliance guy. And he geeks out on appliance stuff. And so I love him for that. Like, you need somebody who actually like lives and breathes, fixing washers and dryers and refrigerators, but I pay a lot for it. So I had to
Okay.
coordinate with Bear for him to go out there. So that's literally, I just paid that bill yesterday.
So it's an informal process. They kind of reach out and contact you, and then you do you coordinate the time, or do you let the tenant coordinate the time?
For that one, I had him coordinate with the tenant because he had to be in the home, and I was like, I don't need to be a middleman on this. And so
Mhm.
I just connected both of them. And so for that one, I did it. I also have some Spanish speaking tenants, and so my main maintenance guy over there is Spanish speaking,
Okay.
which really helps. And so again, I just try to hand it off, um, and do it that way.
Okay. And could you give me a scenario similar to that, but like how you handle your turnover? Not talking about the condo, because that is very rare, like handing over the keys, but like a typical, hey, a tenant's giving notice or moving out, or like how do you go about like, getting in there, getting it up to market, relisting it, and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I very minimally had to do this, but let's take that one where I had those girls fresh out of college. I knew when they moved in, they're probably going to be there 12 to 15 months. They were in that weird post-college, their first year / internship phase. And so when they moved in, part of that conversation was, hey, I'll give you like a 90-day extension because you got to finish up your professional obligations and some of these things. I said, but for me, I do need to get a new tenant in here. And with this 90-day extension, it messes up some of my timing. And so I said, will you work with me if I need somebody to come check it out? Can you keep it show ready? And so they were fine, right? And we found a win-win where they were able to extend for the limited time that they needed. And they were able to work with me to get the tenant in there. And this is something I learned, which I need to do better at, is I used to just put a date for when you move out and when you can move in. I start adding times to that because I need that window of time in between. If it's not clean, they told me they cleaned it. But if the tenant, I don't know if they're out at midnight. I'm not going to drive up there to check and see. I don't want to be up there at 3 a.m. when the U-Haul is unloading. And so my next round with the leases, I've started putting a time of when you can move in and when you have to move out. And it gives time in between for me to make any property. Just send a cleaner in there, do a double check to make sure it's ready for when the tenants move in. So that actually in a perfect world, they're probably not handing off the keys one person to the next.
Okay. So where do you list the rental online?
I have done Zillow and Facebook Marketplace, and then just my personal social media, I'll blast it out there. And for me, Facebook has gotten always more quantity, but it's just endless. Is this place still available? Is this place still available? Do you take Section 8? Do you take Section 8? Do you take Section 8? And then Zillow, it's fewer applications, but because I think it just gets a higher, I don't have as much of kind of the spam clicks.
So can you give me a rundown how you go about handling your bookkeeping and accounting with your rentals?
I have a pretty detailed spreadsheet. And so I have a couple pages of it because I know come tax season, I need it. So I have my Dropbox folder. One sheet is here's every property. Here's the rent. Here's what they paid, so I kind of run across that way. So it's like a year at a glance sort of thing for all the properties. And then I have a separate one that's for all of the maintenance. Who's the company? Did I get the receipt? Did I get the invoice? Because I need those. So I actually have to check off whether or not I get that. And so I have kind of a maintenance sheet that I keep. And it's in the end, it's ultimately not that complicated. And then I'm able to give the reports that I need to my CPA for taxes every year. And he hasn't complained. He hasn't told me I'm a disorganized mess.
So do you have multiple LLCs and multiple business banking accounts, or you centralize it to one? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. I think people have strong opinions about this. I haven't done that. I have a separate bank account where I don't move funds back and forth between personal and rental, whatever. But I just keep it all in a single account. And for me, that's also easier because not all the properties cash flow the same, right? You take the condo with the HOA and, it basically a break even. And so it helps me to kind of offset some of the potential shortcomings there with the cash flow from the other ones. So they're just all in my name, and I have a separate bank account for all the money.
Okay, cool. What about, how do you go about?
I'm open to people yelling and screaming at me in the comments about how I'm a complete idiot and how I need to set up 20 LLCs or whatever. But.
No, I only have 3 and I keep it really simple. I want less complexity and less things to do and less things to track, because I used to work in the Middle East and I had a dangerous job, and there was a real threat that I could die and be taken out of the equation, and my wife would be left with our 3 kids and her having to run the rentals. So I was always constantly trying to make it really simple, tell my wife, hey, there's one email that you got to control, and there's, we have a password vault, thing, and just make sure you know how to get in there, have everything all detailed out and all that stuff. And we have Evernote with lots of SOPs and stuff. And so I was always from the very beginning concerned with like over complexity. Can you tell me how you go about collecting rent? Do they all pay the same type of way? Checks? How does that work?
Um, uh, Again, it's a little bit of a junk drawer of Zelle, Apple Pay. I've thought about standardizing it, but right now I probably get rent. I mean, one guy, he walks down the street and gives me an old school check every month, and that's how he runs it. And it's all been manageable. I've looked into doing some of the apps or streamlining it, but I tenants give me cash. Like it's kind of everything.
Yeah, that's good to be reminded because everybody's all about it's a really popular question. What property management software to use? And they don't realize even when I started out, it's like you don't have to have that, and you can do it the old school way. And it's really you don't need it honestly if you until you get a certain number, and you may not ever need it if you're organized. It just is a way to be a little bit lazy, I guess, and it just kind of makes it a tiny bit easier. But that's cool. I'm glad that you said that. It made me think back and
Yeah.
bring that up.
Yeah, if anybody's watching, they just need to hear that somebody who owns rental properties is organizationally holding it together with bubble gum and whatever. It's like, here we go. I'm here.
Do you communicate with the tenants with your personal phone number stuff, or are you using your company professional facing number and email and stuff?
Good question. So I did create an email address that is strictly for the rentals.
Okay.
Right. That's like Zillow, any applications, anything like that. And that just keeps it all there. So none of my tenants have like my personal email. But they do have my cell. I'm just not smart enough to figure out how to get multiple phone numbers. So they have my cell, but everything paperwork wise, email wise, runs through a different email. And I would recommend anybody do that.
Oh yeah. So I'm kind of coming to the end. I have a few more questions. This is fun for me. I really appreciate you spending time with me and going through all these like detailed, nuanced questions that I like. I do have a point here that I wanted to ask. Like, how do you incorporate your sons in what you do? And like, cause like I'm concerned with like leaving some, rental properties behind to my kids. And what I don't want is them to get the rentals and you just sell them because they're not interested in it. So like something that I kind of am interested in right now, they're kind of young. I'm trying to figure out ideas. How do I go about like getting them involved and trying to hopefully get one of them to at least take the reins and want to continue the trend?
Yeah. I think thus far, so my kids right now are 9, 7, 5, 2. That's how old they are today, at least. 9, 7, 5, 2. And for me, it's not as much a real estate conversation. I mean, they know what daddy does for a job, but I think the way that we talk about it is always people. And so like if one of my kids is with me, we go to pick up rent from one of the tenants. If I got to swing by there, I'll let them meet the tenant and I'll be like, hey, this is the person who lives here, and they get to have a place for their family, and isn't it great that like that they have this home that they can live in. And so wanting them to see it as that side of things, is this a way for us to love and help people? I'm not as interested. At some point, they'll need to learn the spreadsheet and the number side. But if they go into it with seeing owning rental property as a way to help people, then that's a win. And if they sell it all after I die, I mean, I don't know. I probably hope they don't. But if they do, and they take the millions of dollars and they go and they use it to help people in a different way, then I think then that's fine. There are different ways to help people. And if by that point they say, hey, I can build a hospital or something like that, then I mean, what am I supposed to do when I'm dead? Get mad that they built a hospital? Like that's so I want them to grow up to love and care about people, and real estate is a way to do that.
That's great because with the intimate relationship we have with the in-law suite back here, they've experienced that one young college student stay for like 3 years, and then now we have a new single lady. She's older. She's like 50 something. Super nice. She's always talking to the girls and wanting to, cook cookies, like, or bake cookies, and like, talk about dresses and giving each other gifts. The girls will like leave a note on their door and they're always saying hi. There is a relationship. And then they've seen the apartment get built back there, and there's videos of them. And then there's like, they're slowly grasping the idea that we provided that place and somebody is paying to, and it is people, relationship based right now for them. That's great. Okay, so I have a question. Like, I was looking on your website, and I was thinking like, and on all your socials, and I was like, because sometimes I like to give feedback for people that I meet with. And I've had, live streams with other people that are just starting out. So, and I was able to help them. But man, everywhere I looked on all your stuff, you seem very professional. Everything is good. I couldn't find anything except for one thing. You don't have a YouTube channel?
You're not the first person to get on about that. Someday.
Yeah.
So convince me I need a YouTube channel.
Yeah, because I'm like, man, very professional. Your blog you have that newsletter, the weekly emails. I mean, you're doing like regular like videos and stuff on your Facebook, and you're helping people, and you got a great, style, and you're sharing stuff. Part of it's like business and family, and you're really good at like doing that. And I like X, and I see how you are over there, and then you're kind of adapting a little bit how you behave on Facebook. It seems like it's like, and then a little bit with Instagram, and I'm like, man, you're really good at this stuff. Have you had training, or like, how'd you get so good at all that?
I probably think about all the parts of it that annoy me, and then just try to do the opposite. So I don't know. I think it comes back to, I want to use my platform. But okay, let's go back to like going to Uganda, right? I have friends come here. They've come from Africa in recent years, and they told me, one of them said, hey, keep making your videos, because this is how I'm learning about real estate in America. Okay, well then I'm not trying to impress anybody. I want to create content that will help this person become a homeowner one day. And I don't, so I'm not in it for clickbait and stuff like that. I try to be like, hey, how do I talk positively about being a father? How do I speak about my wife publicly? How do I speak about my kids? All of these things. I think I see a lot of things that for me are repulsive. And I see people lie on social media. That's always tough if you know what's true, and then you see them make a post, you're like, that's not actually true. So it's like, I try to bring a version of myself that's not artificial. In a way of like, hey, everything is always the best, and glitz and glamour and all of that, projecting like a fake life. But I do want to use it as a platform to speak positively about the things that I care about, and try to make it very, very helpful for people.
Yeah, that's really good, because I think of this digital footprint that you leave as part of like your inheritance. You're living for your children's children, and they're going to be able to see this and follow along. And that's why I think it's really good that you should definitely get a YouTube, because that's going to have an evergreen life of its own. And I'm always trying to tell my wife to make videos for her YouTube channel, and she's really big into like, all her spiritual development, and the Bible, and she's into the story. She follows all the pastors, and she loves to talk about it and help people in the community. And she's big into our church and small groups, and she speaks in some churches. She's been invited to speak. And I'm like, do this not to worry about like people hating you or online and being she doesn't want to say the wrong thing. She's not a pastor. She's like, I don't want people to think that I'm some kind of woman that's trying to be an authority, and I'm not a pastor. I'm like, no, you're doing it for our kids, and you're helping people. Put yourself out there. And I've seen with her, having to nurture her a little bit and keep reminding her and say, hey, don't worry about it. Because I love when you did the perspective of the Uganda stuff. If you're just helping one person, who cares about all the haters and stuff? But like, if you can make an impact in one person's life, and she she has a few videos and she's somehow taken a root, like a foothold in India. And I guess in India, they got a lot of weird stuff going on over there, but they're interested in Christianity and they're like, oh, your videos are very impactful and helping. I'm like, look at it on a small scale and just helping one, two, three people, and then just delete and remove all the haters and spammers and people in the comments, you know?
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, so I would definitely try to encourage you more to really get on that YouTube thing because I like it because the difference between social media is when you make a video, it kind of disappears down the news feed eventually, and it just kind of it doesn't live very long, especially on X, Twitter. I mean, that stuff lives for like a very short amount of time, and then it's just gone forever. Nobody's gonna look at it ever again. But on YouTube, like the algorithm's constantly looking and trying to find around the world, and next thing you know, it'll connect you with some other thing, and then it's suggesting it, and now it's just constantly getting views, and you're like, what the heck happened to this video? Why is it taking off all of a sudden?
Yeah. All right. Well, you sold me on you sold me on it. And when I start cranking out on some stuff on YouTube, you will be invited as one of my guests.
Oh, good, for sure. And I would definitely love to support you and subscribe and like and comment all that stuff. I love it. So my signature closing questions I have here is the first one is, do you think housing is a human right? Should the government be involved and make sure everybody has a place to live?
Oh man, you should have prepped me on this one. Is it a human right? I I think every person should be treated with dignity and has value. And I think part of that is having a safe place, right? I think kids should have a safe home. And I think it's totally reasonable to say that adults should as well. I think it can look different. I think sometimes what that means is they think every single person should like have a right to own a home. Well, that's different than maybe saying everybody should have a safe place to live, if they want it, right? I've got a little homeless friend. He called himself an urban outdoorsman. He said, if I lived in the mountains, I'd be an outdoorsman. I just live in the city. But he didn't want a roof over his head. And so there's some people, I think legitimately it's a challenge, and I don't know how you solve all of that stuff. But I think working really hard to make sure that everybody who wants a roof over their head, and a safe place for them, for their family, whatever. I think that'd be really, really important. I think everyone should make an effort. Does that make it a human right? Maybe, possibly, if that's if that's what we mean by it. But I think people do need to say that is different, perhaps, in every person. That home ownership is a human right. Those can be maybe two different conversations.
Yeah, good point. And also, the church and charities and other people are involved. So it's not less necessarily, I was just thinking as you're talking, the government's burden alone, you know? So, and maybe they can incentivize and stuff to help tackle that. It's just a question I see a lot. I used to make some videos about squatters and stuff, and I just know it's a really hot button issue. And it's just kind of, I like to get people's different take on it. So thanks for trying to answer. I don't think there's an answer for it, honestly.
Yeah, but I would say it's part of actually a really valuable conversation.
Yeah.
Around what happens to empty nesters, right? Who don't want to move right now. Like there's that. What happens to the open space? What happens to the basement? I have friends that are empty nesters, and they rent out, and they have a desire to rent out furnished basement, but also partner it with like a mentoring sort of relationship with whoever lives there. That's why I say I think the whole conversation, it might look different what housing could be for people in multi-generational living. But I think the conversation matters.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um, and yeah, one more thing I was just thinking is America, we have our individualism kind of thing. So it's like, okay, people break off and they live in their own houses and stuff. But in other countries, a whole family live together in one house, and cousins and distant relatives and stuff. So yeah, maybe that would spark some kind of conversations and thinking about like that cool design of that duplex you were telling me about. Maybe cool stuff like that would come from it. And then the government with the zoning laws, because when I was trying to build my auxiliary dwelling unit back here, they were giving me a hard time. Like I had to fight them for a year and file a variance and win my case for them to grant me permission, because at first they were trying to shut me down. So yeah, all good stuff. Two more things, just one more. The next one would be your biggest real estate failure, or like real estate investing lesson, like something that people could learn from, that you would give advice to maybe new landlords or something.
Be careful about buying properties with HOAs.
Okay.
No, I would say for me, honestly, I I've been lucky, blessed, whatever it is, around like I haven't walked into any landmines. And so from a failure standpoint, I haven't had any big ones. I think the lessons I learned though were I probably have to lean more on the business side of things for it to be a sustainable thing. You can't be a landlord with a bleeding heart forever. That will ultimately be what gets you into trouble. You know, because nobody wants a bankrupt landlord. So, thankfully I've avoided that landmine, but I've looked over there and and seen the danger before I got too close to it. But maybe that was the first half. I don't remember the second half of your question.
It was just basically a failure or a lesson, something that somebody could take away from. Because when you ask those questions, people just answer it any way that they feel. And so a lot of times I feel like we can learn more from like failures or lessons or things that like, sharing our failures. Cause I don't know, like what you said earlier about like people trying to make real estate investing some kind of glamorous, like get rich thing. I mean, you were saying you're blessed to not have, landmines or anything like that, but that's the reality of it. Like there's a lot of failures and people make mistakes and it can ruin their whole life. But yeah, thanks for just sharing anything, that could be helpful. I'm just trying to ask questions and you've been really fun to, have a little guest like interaction with, because you're great. You're a wealth of knowledge. The last thing I'd like to ask is how do people get in contact with you? And I could tell you the links I have and maybe you just kind of check it off, say, yeah, that's good. Or you can add some more because you have a lot. Like I have your website here, your Instagram, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, you have your Twitter X, you have the newsletter like blog thing where you can sign up for the weekly thing. Is that everything or is there anything else?
Yeah, so basically Life and Legacy Properties is pretty consistent across all the platforms, Instagram, website, Facebook, and so the signups are there. X has always just been a personal thing for me, never directly business. But yeah, if you look, I don't know if it'll show on here, but
Yep.
if you look up Life and Legacy Properties, maybe throw Denver at the end of it in Google, you'll find me. And the weekly email is probably the biggest thing that's been growing for me.
Okay. Is there anything I could do for you to close this out?
Pinky swear that you will be a guest on my future YouTube.
No problem. Absolutely got it. That's easy. All right. That's it for now. I guess I'm just going to end this. It was great. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man.